Hello, everyone. This is Dorie Clark. I am here with Newsweek's weekly interview show, Better. And our guest this week is Professor Tony O'Driscoll. Tony is the author of a new book. It's called Everyday Superhero: How You Can Inspire Everyone and Create Real Change at Work. He's also an adjunct professor at Duke University's Fuqua School of Business, as well as its engineering school. He's a research fellow at Duke CE, that stands for Corporate Education. Tony, it's great to have you here.
Great to be here, Dorie. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to everybody who is tuning in from around the world. Please feel free to type your name into the chat box, and well, not your name because we can see that actually, but type your location into the chat box and let us know who you are and where you're dialing in from, because we'd like to say hello, and we'd also like to take your questions for Tony as the day unfolds. Tony, my first question: Everyday Superhero. This is a very cool book. It is also a non-traditional book because it is a business graphic novel, and it's sort of cartoon style teachings about change management and how to make things work more effectively at work. Can you talk a little bit about your decision to do it that way, because it's kind of cool and non-traditional? So what was behind that, man?
Well, I guess you know me, Dorie, so it's kind of like there's a bit of Scott Peck in me. I like to take the road less traveled, right? And Martina O'Sullivan, who was the editor, kind of said, this is a story about people. Organizations are nothing but people. And instead of it being a dry 12-chapter book with lots of words, maybe we want to think about having a graphic or two. I don't mean a framework, but a graphic. Make it more human. She'd just been working with Simon Sinek on a graphic book, and so I had a friend who does all my graphics for my presentations. And we work really, really well together. And I said, well, I have this friend. And so we invited Gary in. Gary said, this is a great idea. She said, great. Very non-traditional, right? So we're taking a fair amount of 2 years worth of research that I did for Brightline, PMI, on why don't strategies get executed. So I did the traditional academic stuff, looked at all the literature, tried to figure it out, put it into a framework, wrote that up as a report. And then the challenge, actually, it took most of like 8 months, was to get all the research to fit into a story. So I had to learn all about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, which I knew about a little bit, but I didn't really know about narrative and the power of narrative. And then the collaboration with Gary. Dorie, we got on Zoom because we were in the middle of COVID, and we just went back and forth. And I have all the recordings of our discussions, and I'd sketch something and he'd draw it. But I would say to you, if we took out the laughter, it was probably only 1 hour, but it was 40 hours of kind of Zoom time. We had a ball because it was true co-creation. Gary knew a lot about narrative and graphic, and how to build it. I knew the research, and truly what emerged here, thanks to Martina's guidance, was this cartoon that you could read, and the goal was about 75 minutes, that you could kind of read the story. Most people who've done it say, I totally know what you're talking about, even though it's quote unquote a factory floor. It's like, I've had that problem. So that was good. And then in the back, there's kind of, so what do you do about it? What does the research say about how to kind of move from a more kind of bureaucratic hierarchical model to more of an open networked collaborative model? So that's the genesis of that story.
That's so interesting. Well, thank you. And so the topic of the book, Tony, you're dealing with change, which is something that all of us have been facing ad infinitum, ad nauseum, since COVID. So talk to us a little bit about some of the teachings in the book. Why is this so hard? And what do we need to be doing differently? Because I think for so many people, this feels like just, an uphill battle. What are we missing here that your book encapsulates?
Yeah. I'm a bit of a Star Trek fan, and I remember Scotty in Star Trek. I'm probably aging myself here, but he always, whenever they were in a big problem and Captain Kirk would call down to the engine room, Scotty would be like, we have to reverse the polarity. We're going to turn on the inversion converters or whatnot. And I think we've got something inverted when we think about change, and I'll do it on two levels. Organizationally, I call this the tyranny of the tangible. Alison Reynolds came up with that term, but I love it. So theft is the most sincere form of flattery, but I want to give credit where credit's due, right? So the tyranny of the tangible is anytime an organization, I'm sitting here with an organization today, and we literally had this conversation last night, is you go for the tangible thing. We're going to do a reorg. or we're going to implement a new process, or we're going to bring a new technology in. So it's normally a kind of structure, process, technology kind of action, because it's tangible. You can see it. You've hired a company, you're bringing in software, you're rearranging the boxes on the hierarchy, because it's tangible. But belief and behavior must come first. People don't resist change. We're still around. Dinosaurs aren't. We're very good at adapting. That's the human, that's what we have over every other species on the planet. But what we really resist is being changed. When we have change imposed upon us, and we either don't know why, we don't have the narrative, we don't understand, or we disagree, we understand but we disagree, what you get is malicious compliance. You're kind of like the head nod, but nothing happens. So the problem is in execution, right, Dorie? So even the best formulated strategy that clearly will add value doesn't happen until it gets executed. Now, the word execution can mean two things in the English language: to do it or to kill it. 70% of the time, the people are killing it. Do you see what I mean? The people of the organization, either because they don't understand the why, the purpose element of it, or they disagree, or they're scared to manage up and say, hey, what you said we want to do isn't working on the ground, or isn't jibing with the culture, or isn't being picked up by the people. So the middle managers, and I hate that term, I'd rather use the term center leaders, they have the best perspective. They sit between strategy and execution. They sit between culture and people. They have that 360-degree view. And a lot of times, the strategy emerges from on high. And then when they go to execute, they say, a lot of times if you talk to center leaders, like, this is DOA, it's dead on arrival. Either the people won't do it, or they got an assumption wrong. But the feedback loop back up is very slow. And I think we need to tighten that up. So number one, tyranny of the tangible, meaning don't lean into structure, process, technology as much. Think about the behaviors, the beliefs and behaviors you want the organization to adopt. Be more principled in what you want to do. And then let people loose. Unlock their discretionary effort, right? And let them go for it. So that's the fundamental kind of idea. Then I got into what are the kind of components of how you run a bureaucracy or how you run a hierarchy, and then how might we, design thinking question, think differently, if you will, about a new model for leadership that reframes leadership in a whole new way. Leadership is not we think about leadership as a noun, it's a position or a role, and it's in a hierarchy. I think actually leadership is a system. It's the sum of the interactions, decisions, and actions of an organization. That's what leadership is. So we have to rethink what leadership means. We have to think about leadership as a system, and we have to operate in a much more collaborative way moving forward.
That's great. I'm Dorie Clark. This is Newsweek weekly interview show Better, and we're here with Professor Tony O'Driscoll. You can go to tonyo'driscoll.com to find out about him. His new book is Everyday Superhero. And if you're enjoying this conversation, hit the like button and hit the share button, and especially ask your questions to Tony in the chat box, whether it's about change, dealing with it, or provoking it in your organization, or about how you can become an everyday superhero. We would love to hear what is on your mind. And we want to say hi to some of the great friends tuning in from around the world. Wade is joining from Houston. We have LinkedIn friends from New York and Portugal. Cheryl is back from Minnesota. Dean's in Greenville, South Carolina. Carolyn is back from Cary, North Carolina. She's your neighbor, Tony. Our mutual friend Alex is tuning in from Durham. Hey, Alex. Diraj is in Atlanta. We have a LinkedIn friend from Seattle, from California. Jesse's in Tennessee. Al Hassan is in London, and Mercy is from Nigeria. We love having every single one of you here. Now, Tony, something that you have quoted that I think is interesting. So, everyday superhero, you're also talking about how to inspire everyone. You, in an older interview of yours, you cited a theme from the internet strategist, Kevin Kelly. And he said, if the internet has taught us anything to date, it is that we need to get better at believing in the impossible. Talk to us about what that means and why that resonated for you.
Yeah, I'm a huge Kevin Kelly fan. I mean, I think in the technology domain, right? And I think there's in the book I talk about something called the human-machine interface, right? And I think a lot of folks we're anthropomorphizing AI too much, right? So that that quote was from Kevin talking about like what's going to happen in the future. He's great at seeing around corners for technology, and let me just explain it through how AI, how Google beat Go. So they used this algorithm called AlphaGo, and AlphaGo was a machine learning algorithm. It learned the game Go, which is way more complex than chess. IBM, Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov many years ago, but this was a real big challenge. And what happened was the technology played itself for, I want to say it was 25 minutes. It literally just ran through an infinite cycle, and then it played the master. Now, here's the interesting thing. Go has been played for 2,500 years, Dorie. 2,500 years, right? The second or third move that the computer made had never been fathomed by a human before. So what I mean by machine intelligence is there's a different algorithm running than what we have, but it comes up with something different, right? So now what Kevin is saying is we need to marry that machine intelligence that is not ours with ours, and then anything can become possible. And the most important thing there is heading on to Martin Reeves here is we need to allow the machines to do what they do from a productivity perspective. That's clear. But now what we need to recognize is that there's a machine intelligence that's different than our intelligence, but it still can't imagine. So we can now let the humans imagine what's possible and let the machine help us make that possible. So that's where I come down on kind of AI and human. At the end of the day, human ingenuity is something that's going to be very hard for us to replicate. It will come at some point in time, but I still think there's time there. But I still feel that we in organizations are kind of not giving technology its due in terms of doing more than it currently does to allow us to bring our unique and differentiated talents to play. In the future, I truly do believe, I was just actually in a session with Ram Charan, and he was talking about this, is talent is the differentiator, but the real differentiator is unlocking that talent around something that people have true passion for. I mean, you're an example of this, right? You clearly are doing what you love. Like you just perma-smile, right? Perma-grin almost. And therefore you have the energy to do the work that you do. It's discretionary effort. And I think this discretionary effort is what you will do because you're compelled to, not because you're commanded to. You can't not do it because you're curious or whatever it is that drives you. I think that's a level of potential energy that's sitting dormant in every organization today. And part of what the book is about is how do you unlock that discretionary effort and just get this wave of imagination moving inside organizations, supported now by the next wave of technology that's coming. And I think that's going to be the job of a leadership system, every leader at every level. And to me, I don't define a leader as somebody in the hierarchy. I define a leader as somebody that others are willing to follow. And that's a very different model, because some people are not in the hierarchy, but they're definitely followed, if you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Yes. This is Dorie Clark. This is Newsweek's weekly interview show, Better. If you would like to make sure you never miss one of our episodes, you can go to DorieClark.com. You can sign up to get a free self-assessment, download that, and you will join the email list and get reminders about events like this, which happen every Thursday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, 5 o'clock in London. And if you want to learn more about our illustrious guest, it's Tony O'Driscoll. This is his website, TonyO'Driscoll.com. His new book is Everyday Superhero. And we want to say hi to some of our great friends tuning in from around the world to join us. Thank you for being here, amazing people. We've got, oh my goodness, we have Marla from Tampa. Mary's here from Pittsburgh. Nancy's in the house from Boston. Alicia's in Berkeley. Patricia's also in Boston. You two should be friends. Madeline is in Germany. Juan Esteban is in Costa Rica. Peter's in Edinburgh. David's in Sao Paulo. We have a LinkedIn friend from California. Kathy is in St. Louis, and Dawit is in Ethiopia, and Alexis is in West Africa, and Layla is from North Africa. Wow, Africa's doing very well here. props to your continent for tuning in so effectively. I appreciate it. Aviva's in Israel and Jai is in Delhi. We love having every single one of you. Some great questions, Tony, have come in from our friends in the audience. And Dean wants to know, what is the difference between change and pivoting? And how do you recommend leaders approach each? And can you talk more about the balance between being flexible and adaptable versus consistent and sticking to a plan? This is the challenge here, right? How do we know the right thing at the right time? I mean, clearly you need to do both, but how do you get that balance right?
Yeah. Fantastic question. So in this book, and I'm guilty of this, I really did just more argue for one side. So I believe firmly that every organization today has to run as what I call it, well, this is John Cotter, I think, coined the term, a dual operating system. So there's one operating system that's about maximizing profitability in your current core business. And that works quite well through a hierarchy where you know your customers and you know what you have better predictability on how you're going to grow your core because you've been doing it for a while. The problem is when you see a new opportunity as a business, then you seize that opportunity, you create, first mover advantage or some position of advantage. Then your focus is first external, trying to see where there's value you can create for the customer. Then once you've validated that value, then you start to look a little bit inward because you want to open your jaws of profitability. You want to grow your top line and you want to, reduce your costs so you can make a bigger margin. And so the kind of energy of the firm starts to look in. We start to look at how do we kind of get the plumbing and gears and cogs and levers moving. And we become absorbed by that. And in being absorbed with that to open the jaws of profitability in our current core business, we kind of get blinders on to seeing where's the market shifting, right? So that business should stay as it is. And if you try to do something innovative within that business, it'll get killed because that business's job is not to do that. It's to maximize profitability in this. So the other business is about finding the next profit pool to jump into. And that's far more generative. Productive learning is knowing how to do the things that you currently know how to do. Generative learning is figuring out where we're going next. And that's a contact sport. And that is a diversity sport, diversity of perspective, diversity of opinion. And you have to have this melting pot of because we're figuring it out. The known core business is the find it out world. So you want to execute. The new business is a figure it out world. And the idea is who's faster at figuring things out. So in that world, you have to think about the organization as a decision factory. That's kind of throttling idea flow. In the other world, it's more about efficiency in what you know. So the pivots, a lot of people talk about, hey, we need to be fast. Speed kills. You can run over the cliff really, really fast. You can run over the cliff really, really fast. So agility is different. I'll give you an example. Usain Bolt, world's fastest man. So he has a penchant for soccer. Australian professional team hires him after he retires. The theory is he's faster. He's the fastest soccer player. He's faster than Gareth Bale by 3 miles per hour. So put him on the halfway line, kick the ball over, and have Usain run and score a goal. He's faster. That's speed. Well, when he got on the field, if you watch the videos, it's a little sad because he's definitely faster, but he trips over the ball one time. Another time, a defender gets to him and he doesn't know how to pivot. He didn't use the word pivot, but when he was being interviewed afterwards, he's like, I'm very fast, but I don't know how to pivot. And so I think that for organizations in the future, the idea is how can you maintain speed but change direction as needed without losing momentum, right? And that has to come, I believe, from a customer back set of insights because it's the market that's changing, not from a product forward. So product forward is a bit more efficiency driven, hierarchically led, command and control. But I think the other operating system that many companies are lacking today is this kind of sense and respond type thing where you're running multiple options to try to see which progression path works. Now, once you identify a possible opportunity in the new market, you put it back into the first operating system and then it checks to see, is there a real market there? Can we make money? And so on and so forth. So that's how I see those two dovetailing. It used to be in the old world, Dorie, you know this well, you had exploit companies and explorer companies. Now, you have to do both in a faster cycle if you want to grow.
Absolutely. We're here with Tony O'Driscoll. You can learn more about him at tonyo'driscoll.com. His new book is called Everyday Superhero: How You Can Inspire Everyone and Create Real Change at Work. And Tony, some great questions have been coming in from our amazing viewers. And one that I want to highlight here, and I won't highlight it too long because it covers your face, but I will read it. And it is from Haley. And Haley says, as a middle manager, I get a seat at the table to strategy calls, but I often find that my input is heard, but rarely taken into consideration for action. How can managers who don't have decision-making power still help create change in their organizations? What are your thoughts, Tony?
I think so. Fantastic question. Again, middle manager, center leader. And I've done in prior work, not this book, but I talked a whole lot about this notion of a center leader. First of all, I feel your pain. Right? It's very difficult. There's nothing more frustrating than having a seat at the table but not being heard. I mean, let's be real about that, right? And I think the irony is that I'm a strategy guy. I've done strategy my whole life. So the strategy is formulated in the mahogany offices, right? Based on a whole set of assumptions that may or may not be true and are becoming less true each day because the more connected we are, the less predictable things are. That's just how things, the economy has become a complex adaptive system. So predictability has gone down. So that means you need more adaptability, not speed, but adaptability, or agility, if you want to call it that. Who knows? Who gets the weak signals sooner as to whether or not our intended strategy is going to work or not? That middle manager. I'm going to call it the center leader. So in a way, the hierarchical leadership system needs to use its two ears and shut its one mouth a little bit to listen to the middle management, because they will have the first headlights on whether something will or won't work. It will or won't work maybe from a market adoption perspective, or it will or won't work because the organization itself will execute kill as opposed to execute do. So I feel that, again, if we don't think about leadership as a hierarchy, but we think about it as a network, center leaders should have disproportionate perspective brought into the decision-making process. Now, what does that require? It requires that those at the top of the organization today let go. And that's very, very, very difficult, right? I mean, you've worked your whole, I'm sitting here with a number of these, and they're wrestling with that. It's like the ladder that I climbed to get to where I am, it has every proof that this is the right thing. But at the same time, if you ask them, and personally, they're like, but I don't know the answer because it's too complex. So none of us is as smart as all of us. And I really, really do believe, I do not believe that middle managers are dinosaurs. I firmly believe that middle managers are dynamos. You sit between strategy and results. You sit between culture and people. And that's the fulcrum. I see that as like a propeller. The center leader is the fulcrum. The center leader is the fulcrum that pushes the organization forward. It's around that perspective and fulcrum. Unfortunately, John Cotter's research suggests that maybe only 2 to 3% of organizations have kind of got that memo and started to kind of think of leadership as more of a networked system. So hang in there and know that you are a center leader, even if your leadership hasn't quite recognized that yet.
Thank you, Tony. We're here with Tony O'Driscoll. He's the author of the new book, Everyday Superhero. We want to say hi to our great friends tuning in from around the world. Hallie is joining us from the lands of the Kitstonwa in Southern California. Welcome. We have Miriam from Malawi. We've got Sacham joining us. Asamanya is in India. We've got Vusi, who's joining us here. And we have Robin in York, Pennsylvania. Oluwafemi from Nigeria, Dieter's in Austria. We have a LinkedIn friend from Brazil, Charlie in California, and Bree from Knoxville. We love having all of you. And Tony, a question came in from Tamsin in Boston, and she says, Tony, it seems like there's often a gap between the beliefs that a company wishes it embodies and the beliefs that actually guide what it and its people do. I'm fascinated by that relationship with the beliefs and behavior that underlie change or the resistance to it. So the question, she says, is how have you found it possible for companies to uncover these deeper behaviors that guide what they actually do rather than the ones they wish they did? What do you think?
Yeah, fantastic question. Your audience is clearly erudite, right? This is where all the stuff around purpose, I think, becomes really important. Let me just see if I can preface it this way. in a world that's as complex as the one that we operate in today, outcome predictability is low, and environmental manipulation, like do I push this button or pull this lever, the causality between the two is hard. So you kind of got a double whammy. You're not sure what the outcome might be, and you're not exactly sure how to get there, even if you knew what it would be. So you got a double bind there. So you can't really put rules in place. What you need is kind of direction and principle. So this is kind of purpose and principle. Now, Ranjay Gulati's just done a really nice job of kind of synthesizing purpose down. So I'd give a head nod to his book on purpose. But if the companies I've worked with more recently, one, I'll give an example, an insurance company. We spent 2.5 months just identifying what the company's purpose was. And then we spent another 7 months testing that purpose with all stakeholders and pressure testing it as to whether or not that had meaning for them. Now, this was a arduous and painful process. And many times the leadership team was almost like, I don't know if this is going, but the CEO was adamant. He let go in this particular instance, and he kind of really said, if this is the purpose that's going to animate and drive us, then the next question is, what beliefs must we adopt and what behaviors must we propagate in order for that to happen? Because I think a lot of times we overpromise and underdeliver. Now, some of that might be just because we don't have the capability to deliver. But I'm talking now about if you truly have an aspiration and you can get alignment around that aspiration from the different, not just from your own organization, but from the stakeholder community you work with, right? And then people, once they get that unlocks the discretionary effort. But belief and behavior must come first. I'll give you a very, very candid and simple example. My kid, 17 years old, likes the TikTok, right? So I walk into his room after Christmas. I push the door open. That's a better way to say it. And it's just chaos in there. And I'm like, kid, clean up your room. And he's like, huh? I said, I'll be back. Hierarchy. I'll be back in 1 hour. And if this room is not clean, blah, 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 right? And so I leave. And I walk into my room. Dorie, it's a disaster, right? So I'm going, why would my kid be motivated to do it? Because what you do speaks far more loudly than what you say. So I think the most important kind of takeaway, it's in the book, is leadership today is about demonstrating change behavior, not demanding change behavior. You know what I mean? And so if you can line up the purpose, you can have people who find meaning in that purpose, and then you give them autonomy to go do it however they want to, but you hold them accountable for doing it. So you have aspiration, alignment, autonomy, and accountability. You get those four, you get the agility you need to move forward. But the time you must spend to get clarity around connecting to that purpose all through your stakeholder community, that is hard work.
That is for sure. And demonstrate, not demand. That's a good mantra for all of us. We're here with Tony O'Driscoll. I'm Dorie Clark. This is Newsweek's weekly interview show, Better. And Tony is the author of Everyday Superhero. That is his new book. The subtitle is How You Can Inspire Everyone and Create Real Change at Work. You can learn more about Tony at tonyo'driscoll.com. And we have time, Tony, for probably one more question. There's so many great ones that are coming in. But I think this one is useful. Jamie wants to know, how do you help administrators who are threatened by sharing information? Sometimes people feel like, hoarding information is their only source of power. So why would they change that behavior if they think that would cause them harm? What would you advise in such a situation? Because obviously not great for the organization.
Yeah, unfortunately, and look, look at the book I just wrote. I'm a huge advocate. I'm a big Charles Handy fan. Organizations are nothing but people. Think about it. If the human beings in any company today, I don't care if it's a $400 billion company or a $4 company, well, I don't know, there's a $4 company, a lemonade stand somewhere. If the people walk away, the lemonade stand is empty, right? People literally breathe life into organizations. Now, I'm also a big believer that there are no bad people, just bad behavior, right? And in some instances, there's just not a match, right? You might, are you on the bus? Or one of the leaders here, the way he puts it is, do you want to be in driving the bus, or do you want to sit in the back watching cartoons? And we want people who are in driving the bus, right? You see? And so in some instances, and I think information hoarding is one that's very detrimental in this day and age. If people, after finding the purpose, are not letting go of information, because information is the currency that creates inspiration and innovation, then they got to go. They would do better somewhere else. Netflix, I'm sure you know this, but they have a very, very solid rule: no brilliant jerks. So much so, Dorie, that if a brilliant jerk makes it through the recruiting process, they will say, sorry, and we will pay you 3 months of severance, but we can't accept brilliant jerks in here. And one element of being a brilliant jerk is like, I know everything, and I'm either the hoarder of information or, sit and listen to my wisdom. And like I said before, none of us is as smart as all of us today. And I think if we could put all of our people to work to figure out what comes next, those are the organizations that will succeed. That's predicated on open sharing.
That's great. Very empowering. We've been here with Tony O'Driscoll. You can learn more about him at tonyo'driscoll.com. I'm Dorie Clark. This is Newsweek's weekly interview show, Better. Tony's new book is Everyday Superhero. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in this week. We'll be back next week at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, 5 o'clock in London. Tony, thank you for being here.
Dorie, pleasure. Looking forward to a great 2023.
That's right. Happy 2023, everyone. See you next week.